Y'all, it was the morning after, and my place is a mess. Hey Stitchers, it's your girl Kris here. Welcome into the channel if you're new. Welcome back to the channel if you are an OG. However you got here, wherever you are here, thank you for clicking on today's video. And you guys, I am going to be telling you about 2 sewing classes that I held over the weekend. It is actually Monday morning when I am recording this video, and no, I'm not at work. Thank you, baby Jesus, that I was smart enough to take 2 days off work, because there is no way I would have been able to get up for work this morning. In fact, my husband woke me and he was like, Kris, you're late, we're late. And I'm like, no, we're not. I told you, babe, that I have 2 days off. And he went, oh, I forgot. And so I ended up getting up at almost the same time as when I was going to work. But your girl is exhausted and my entire body hurts. My shoulders, down in my back. You might notice that I'm actually wearing my back brace today. This is not like a fat burner or tummy melter or any of those things. This is actually a brace. It has some padding in the back just to give my lower back a little bit of support, because God knows I am in pain, I tell you. But I think at the end of the day, it was very much worth it. And I figured while I'm doing some cleaning up, I would tell you guys a little bit about how my sewing classes went this weekend. A couple of you have been supporting the channel financially by donating through my Ko-fi link. And whenever I get funds through my Ko-fi link, they either go right back here into this channel or right back here, like where I am, into my sewing space, because I need to have fabrics and patterns and threads and so on, so I can sew things up and actually have them to share with you. I also need to have like subscriptions for Canva and for CapCut and all that thing, so that I can bring you videos here on the channel. And I just wanted to say a quick thank you to those of you who do support the channel financially. Right, so enough talking about that. I am surrounded by all of my machines. I need to wipe them all down with a Lysol or Clorox wipe or whatever, because everybody is touching the machines. And if I'm going to have classes, I want to be as hygienic as possible. So I'm going to have to wipe down all of the machines, make sure that everything is in the right box, unpack all of the notions that I had to take to class. It's a lot of work, you guys. It is a lot of work. Preparing the patterns for classes, because these were more like sewing socials as opposed to formal classes. I did all of the prep work. I put all the patterns together, cut out all the pieces, did all the interfacing, matched the threads, matched the webbing, blah, 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 blah. And so when the participants showed up at the class, they already had an assembled kit. It was really just for them to focus on using the machines. Now, as I said, I am surrounded by boxes right now. And so I am going to unpack each machine and just make sure. Can I get my chair out? Okay, I got it. Just make sure that I have all of the pieces I need to have in each box. And then I can ramble on to you guys about the sessions. So let me just lower this. Right, so as I was saying, for these classes, I did all of the prep work. When I get a dedicated space, I will be able to actually teach from the very beginning, from measuring, from pattern prep and all of that. But I do not have a dedicated space. It means that every time I host a class, I have to get a spot, which is usually empty, and then arrange the table and chairs and the machines, run wires and all of that. And then I only have a dedicated window to make use of said space. So for the classes this weekend, each class was meant to be from 3 to 7. The kids class went over maybe by about 15 minutes, and that is simply because they have a follow-up session in February. And I thought about doing it that way because I wasn't sure that the kids would have been able to finish their project in one sitting. Now, we were working on aprons with the kids. They were working on the Sam apron, which is a free pattern by Helen's Closet. And so I had printed off the pattern in a couple of sizes. And then because I was familiar with some of the kids, I was able to make an educated guess about the sizes that I probably needed to cut out. And so I ended up cutting out, I think, two of the smallest size, four of the smallest size, and two of the size just above. And I think they worked out quite nicely. And each apron was different, you guys. No two aprons had the same, like fabrics and webbings. Everything was handpicked by yours truly and color coordinated, if I do say so myself. Now, with the kids, I found it to be a little bit challenging in that I have forgotten how much I didn't know when I didn't know it, if that makes any sense at all. So these kids have, for the most part, never sewn a stitch in their life. And so we had to slow right the way down. And it was very ironic that notwithstanding that they had no idea what they were doing, a lot of the kids wanted to sew faster. And I had to be saying over and over again, let's try and do it right. Let's not worry about how slow we're moving. The machines have been set to the slowest speed for a good reason. And it is because I want to make sure that you have the best chance of success. Now, I just felt like if they made good progress, they would be a lot more likely to want to continue the process in the future. I know how frustrating sewing can be, especially when you don't get it right. And I didn't want to dissuade anybody by going too quickly or by doing a project that was too hard to start with. Try explaining that to 8 to 14-year-olds. They weren't having it. But nonetheless, I think we made good progress on the aprons. They still have quite a lot of work to do. The bias binding gave them a hard go, and I thought that that would be the trickiest part of this apron. But I feel like almost all aprons need that just to close up the arm area. So I did have to take tons of time demonstrating and then assisting them in sewing up the bias binding. So some of them have finished the bias binding and are waiting to move on to like the straight hemming and so on, which I think will be fairly easy. One or two of them still have to finish up the opposite side of their bias binding, and they learned very quickly that the seam ripper is a sewist's best friend. They thought it was funny when I said it first, but they found out really, really quickly just what I meant. Now, so far as the adult class is concerned, I found that the adults were actually a lot easier to teach. And it's funny because I had put up a poll over on Instagram asking whether the adults would be easier to teach or the children. And there was overwhelming vote that the kids would be easy to teach. The second vote was they would both be equally hard. And I think about just 9% of the votes said that the adults would be easier to teach. And they were, in fact, easier to teach, you guys. And we were able to complete their entire tote bags in this session. We did go over, however, by like 40 or so minutes, I think. But they nonetheless were able to finish their tote bags. So I'm just going to pause right here and I'm going to pop in some footage from Saturday's class and then from Sunday's class just to give you guys an idea of what went down. Some of the orientations are vertical instead of horizontal, so forgive me from now. I was taking some of the footage on my phone and I was trying to teach and then capture some content, which proved to be very difficult. I did have my ring light, But because of how the room was set up, I didn't turn it on, like I didn't put my camera on because it would be facing in one direction and I wouldn't be able to like spin it around the room. So I was, in addition to teaching, trying to capture content because I wanted you guys to see what went down. So as I said, forgive me about the orientations, right? So go check out the footage. All right, so from the top of your apron, the top of your apron is going to be at the top of the bib. So this straight piece at the top, you are going to measure down 1.5 inches from the top. So the light green part is going to be at the top of the apron, and the dark green part is where you're going to put the marking. If you turn it the other way around, Reyes, it's going to be so much easier. So if you slide it like this, the dark green part is at the top, and you're going to put the marking right along. So you're going to hold it like this, and you're going to put a marking right across the top. So you're going to turn your gauge around. So turn it around, Amira. Turn it around, not around this way. So the dark green part is at the top of the apron, and you're going to hold it right at the top of the apron like this, and you're going to put a little line right along here to sew. So you have to hold it very well, so it's going to be accurate. All right, folks, guess what? So the girls are learning the beauty of unpicking. So many of them are unpicking stitches. Why? Because they want to rush and they're not sewing their stitches straight. And so they have been met with the fate of the unpicker. Did anybody tell them that this was a part of sewing? So we have slowed down quite a bit because we have to be remedying all the mistakes. So I probably should walk you around the room so you can see what the girls are doing. So this is Reyes, and she is unpicking her bias binding. She don't want to see she face, she hiding from me. Over here we have Amira. Amira has gone the furthest with her apron. She's actually prepping her pocket pieces, so she is well in front. Then all the way over here we have Janice. She is also unpicking, and Saraya, team unpicking as well. Do you guys sense what's going on in here? I feel like we're unpicking more than we're sewing. And over here we have Alana. She had to unpick. She has finished her unpicking, and now she's starting her apron basically from scratch. She has to redo all of her bias binding because she had some wonky stitches. So I'm going to sit with her at her station and see if we can remedy her bias binding situation. Stop. Reposition your hands. Go ahead now again. 1, 2. See, that is much better in terms of the curls here. It comes gradually. It's still not perfect, but it's getting better. So if you take it, you're moving your hands this way. And then you have to keep stopping because as you move your hands and the fabric is pulled this way, your hands start going this way. You don't want it all the way here. So when you find it getting too far to the back, you stop again, reposition your hands, go again. All right, you guys, did you see how excited those kids were? You could see the grins plastered on their faces with their aprons, and they're not even finished yet. So can you imagine how proud they will be when we actually finish their aprons? Now, so far as the adults were concerned, You can't even talk to some of them today, I'm telling you. They were as proud as punch. And by right, they should be. Most of them have either never sewn before or probably did one or two things way back when they were in school, but they haven't done anything sewing related for at least 2 decades, if not more. And so I was really excited to see how excited they were about taking on this project. And they were particularly excited, I think, about the fact that their tote bags were all different. Now, when I was planning to do these socials, and I'm calling them socials only because they don't have the formal class element, I thought long and hard about how I wanted to present their sewing kits. And I took my time shopping for my fabrics. And I bought most of my fabrics from Style Maker Fabrics at full price. Like, I didn't get a discount or any sort just because I was doing this project. I shopped for the materials in the same way that I would shop for my very own materials. Now, there was a nominal fee attached to the adult class. It was $185, which is Eastern Caribbean dollars. And for reference, the exchange rate to the US dollar is 1 to 2.7169. So 20 US dollars is 54 Eastern Caribbean dollars. So 54 into 185, 50. So we're talking about 20, 40, 60, maybe about 70 US dollars, if I'm not mistaken. I hope I'm not making an absolute fool of myself here on camera. But they paid maybe about 70 US. Yeah, about 70 US, because 50 US is $135. So I'm going to say about 70 US for this class. And bear in mind, I had to shop for all my fabrics online, pay to have them shipped by a freight forwarding service to here on the island. Then I had to pay some nasty custom fees, which are like import duties. And then obviously I had to provide all of the notions, all of the supplies, the marking tools, the cutting tools, all of the threads, the pins, the whole shebang, you guys. And in addition to that, they had food. I thought that if I was going to have an adult sewing social, then we needed to have little nibbles. So I did do some charcuterie cups. Oh my gosh, because dare to be different, why don't we? And then I also had wines available and sparkling cider for those people who did not drink alcohol. So as you can imagine, I did not make any money from this project. And I only had 7 people because I only have 7 machines. And obviously my machine, which I used to demonstrate on. And so, as I said, I did not make any money from this sewing social. I poured all of it right back into all of the materials and the food. Luckily, I did not have to pay for the venue because this is really a community project. I was just asking people basically to cover the costs of their bag kits, not to pay me to teach them or to do all of the prep work, which, by the way, has taken me weeks. Between working and looking after my family, I have been cutting bags, cutting, interfacing, and fusing for weeks. Weeks. So absolutely no profit to be had except for the satisfaction of yesterday's event. Now, they were encouraging me yesterday to raise the prices. They were like, girl, raise the price and make a profit because this was really, really good. And that really warmed my heart because I was a little bit concerned that people would not appreciate just how expensive of a hobby sewing is. Getting the raw materials can cost a pretty penny. And because we were making bags, I wanted to have canvas fabrics and I wanted to have interfacing because at the end of the day, I wanted them to have something that felt professional. Even if it wasn't perfect, it at least felt like a real bag. Now for the kiddies, they had to pay. I just realized that I'm talking and I'm not working. For the kiddies, they had to pay $100 EC dollars. And that covers 2 sessions because, as I said, I was not convinced that they would be able to get all of the aprons finished in the 1 session. So they basically paid 50 EC dollars for Saturday's session. And as I said, 54 EC dollars is 20 US. So they did not even pay 20 US. and I supplied all of the materials. Obviously, it meant that I had to dig into my own pocket because that would not have been enough to cover all of the materials for the aprons. And aprons take quite a bit of fabric. I think I used at least a yard and a bit. And it has the bias binding, which means it's eating up more fabric, maybe a yard and a half or so, I think, for each apron. And I didn't cut straps. I bought webbing for the straps. So again, you can see that there was really no profit to be had in classes this weekend. I don't know if it will change over time. Maybe as people start appreciating how expensive sewing is, or maybe when I finally stop second guessing my value, maybe then I will be able to actually come up with a proper pricing structure and then make some sort of profit. But I can tell you that that was just not this weekend's mission at all. And the goal really is not to become a millionaire, you guys. I know I'm not going to become a millionaire from teaching sewing, but the goal is to really encourage people to want to learn to sew, because it's definitely a dying art. And in my community, there are very few people who actually sew. Even professionally, there are about, I think, 3 or 4 professional seamstresses, and they're all up in age. I'm not calling anybody old by any means, but they are up in age, which means that sooner or later, probably sooner rather than later, we're going to need fresh blood to continue providing that service. And that's not me, because I'm not interested in sewing for other people. It's just way too time consuming for me to actually sew for somebody else and then to deal with all the attitudes that pop up because they want this in that way, and then they call you at the last minute and say they want it changed. I'm not really about that life, you guys. And as I said, I don't think it will be valuable anyway, because when you can get an outfit on Shein for $20 US, there's no way you're going to want to pay me like $200 and $300 US to make you a custom garment. And if I go to do that, I'm definitely going to be pricing for my work and my time. But so far as teaching is concerned, I think I have just a slightly different mindset. And I recognize that this is my little contribution to giving back to my community. This is my way of providing some generational wealth in my community. So that's what we're doing. We're going to teach, and whether we make a profit or not, we're going to teach. And hopefully over time, people will, I guess, catch on to wanting to sew. And maybe one day I can really make this my livelihood. But I know today's not the day. Tomorrow is not the day. The day after that is probably not going to be the day either. But yeah. And can we talk about all of the work that's involved? Now, when you want to have a sewing social, or any social really, anything that takes planning. Lots of planning, working out the logistics, and in my case, transporting all of these boxes to venue, setting them up in a way that encourages sewing, encourages learning, and is exciting as well. And then having to take them all back down. And that is the worst part, you guys. I lifted boxes and I had my husband to help. Next class, I'm not going to have my husband to help. He's not going to be here. And I'm going to have to lift all these boxes on my own. So start sending me good vibes from now. If I had known he wasn't going to be here, I would not have put the follow-up classes when I did. But it has already been in the pipelines. And so I'm just going to have to follow through. So as I said, please send me all of the good vibes. Oh. Right, so all in all, I'm really, really proud of what went down over this weekend. And I am thankful to those of you who support the channel, even who have just sat down and watched me rabble on for maybe like half an hour about what went down at my sewing socials. I really do appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your comments, for your likes, for your hypes, for your subscriptions, for following me, for messaging me, for sending me good vibes. I really, really appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to your continued support as I venture out into another arm, I guess, of my sewing journey. I think that is all I wanted to ramble on about with you guys today. I feel like it was very haphazard. There was no rhyme or reason to it. But nonetheless, I'm hoping that you enjoyed hearing about the sewing classes. And if you have been thinking about doing any sewing socials in your area and just reaching out and building your local communities, then I would definitely encourage it. It is fulfilling. As I said, it might not make you a millionaire, but it definitely does something to your spirit. And today, my spirit and my heart is very, very, very full. Now, if you enjoyed today's video, then be sure to go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Drop me a comment down below and let me know if you have any ideas, any recommendations about things I can offer in classes, how I can make them beginner friendly, how I can make them more exciting. Any of your tips and tricks would definitely be appreciated. I need projects that can be done within about 4 hours for now until I get a more dedicated space, and then I can teach like formal classes maybe once a week or twice a week or something like that, so that there is some continuity, and then they can learn how to measure, how to cut, blah 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 blah. But for now, I am just going to be concentrating on the sewing socials. Teaching, yes, but in a more social and fun setting. Now, if you have gotten this far in today's video and you have listened to this rant or this ramble, whatever, then I would appreciate if you consider subscribing. I feel like you need to be here. Like, if you listen to this video, then you definitely are my people and you need to be here. So hit the subscribe button, turn your notification on, and that means you will be able to catch my more fun videos. That is everything I needed to share with you today. So I'm going to finish cleaning up. And until next time, stay calm, stay cool, stay safe, and absolutely keep sewing. Peace.